When first released in 1980, Pac Man wowed generations. Everyone was obsessed with playing this simple game about a maze, a yellow dot that's chasing and eating stuff, and has ghosts as enemies. Since then, Pac Man has actually turned 46 years old, and it somehow still didn't make its way to the vibe coding bros. So today we are going to attempt to recreate this game with AI from scratch with a small 2026 twist. We are going to leave it up to AI what this twist will be, but hopefully the gameplay will be updated and we'll see whether AI is truly able to make a simple hit like Pac Man actually come true. We will be using and comparing two of the leading AI coding models at the moment, which is Claude and Gemini, and we will actually test Gemini 3 Flash and Gemini 3 Pro just to actually throw in a little bit of spice there. There's three criteria that a working game of Pac Man should fulfill, and these are the following. First, is the game actually functioning? A lot of the times AI models produce something great, but sometimes we still run into AI slop that is completely useless and can be thrown into the garbage. So we'll see which model can actually create a functioning game. Then the second one is whether the enemy dynamics work as expected. And then finally, the third element that we are looking for today is whether the 2026 twist actually works and whether there is something unique compared to the old gameplay, which you can see now. So with these goals in mind, I headed over to Rosebud AI and selected Gemini Agent Fast, which is basically Gemini 3 Flash, and I wrote in my initial prompt, which is make Pac Man but give it a 2026 spin. At this point, I didn't know what to expect, but I knew it was going to be a 2D game, and after letting the model run for a while, I got my first version of the game. You will see that a lot of things are going to break in this episode, but bear with me because I do promise there is a working game at some point in here. So this is the first game that was produced by Gemini Flash, and it seems like it just nothing was happening. Dots were falling, crickets everywhere. I had no control. I was pressing the WASD keys for my life. I was pressing the arrows and nothing happened. So what else could I do other than type in a prompt and say that the game mechanics don't actually work? I had no other better way of describing what the situation was, and I just simply said that I can't move to collect any of the food or fight any of the enemies, and I gave this right back to Gemini, hoping that it would be able to fix this initial error that somehow went wrong. In the meantime, I scrolled up to my prompt to see what was actually the 2026 twist that I got, and it seems like it agreed on futuristic visuals. So it says that the game features a sleek cyberpunk aesthetic with neon circuitry maze styles, glowing data cores, and high resolution layout. It also had security drones, it seems, but I couldn't really see them around. That was probably the dust that were falling off. A digital atmosphere with post-processing effects and fluid mechanics. And maybe the problem was that I was trying to do so much in one prompt, and that's what actually failed it. I'm gonna give it to Gemini. The game actually looked pretty good, but even when I tried to replay it, I realized that the error was not me. The error was Gemini trying to make this game work even though it shouldn't have. So then I just started waiting, or I continued waiting all the way until I got my new edits on the game, and I was really hoping that I could start playing it because the visuals look cool. Now, I don't know if there was anything 2026 about this, but I had a new version of the game ready and I was ready to play it. It seems like it was moving, but it was moving so laggily. I could barely follow my own movement, and as soon as I figured out where I am, an enemy would most likely catch up with me and I would die in seconds, like right here. So I actually didn't have any control over myself, and I told Gemini to try fix this, make it less laggy because I can barely follow anything. And I don't know if you noticed this, but between round 1 and round 2 of edits, it actually changed the graphics so much. Nothing was as glowing anymore. Nothing was as like big and fat and like shiny. So actually when I'm viewing this post edits, I thought this was a whole other game. Anyway, I was waiting for a good minute here, waiting for Gemini to try and fix the game, and I was looking at the fixes that it was trying to implement, and it says it's trying to fix like very simple things in terms of the lag reduction and taking away some of the backup stuff and adding in responsive movement. But at this point I had a hunch that these are not the real issues that should be solved, and there was probably a much bigger issue that was keeping me from actually having a good game here. Anyway, my suspicions was quickly confirmed as soon as I started playing. I said it was laggy again, and I said a quick prayer, kissed my avatar goodbye, and I was getting ready to be captured by the enemies. Unfortunately, I couldn't even do that because I was just stuck in one place, so somehow my keys broke and I couldn't even move. The enemies were also stuck in one place, and at this point I just called it quits. I've had enough of Gemini and I just wanted to move on and try this with Claude. Here's a final run through on full screen of the game that I had. I could not figure out to save my life how to move around in this once Gemini had done this round of edits. So you can see me being stuck and struggling and kind of rotating in one place without actually achieving much movement. And whenever I did, that was very random. So looking at all the 3 criteria that we had for this game, I can confidently say that Gemini 3 Flash met none of them. There was no functionality in the game. I mean, I'd say maybe that was there actually for like 50%. So I could collect the points and I could somewhat move around, but it wasn't working and I was not happy with the results. The enemies weren't moving anymore, and the 2026 twist, there was just nothing special about the game. So I would say that was gone down the drain as well. And with that, we moved over to Claude Agent, which is Rosebud's newest version of Claude, and I wrote in basically the same prompt, a very simple make Pac Man but with a 2026 twist, and I sent it off for creation. I was really hoping to get a win here because I was quite annoyed after trying to debug Gemini and not really succeeding. I feel like I could have probably achieved a better result, but the goal was to try this in 2 to 3 prompts instead of overdoing the bug loops and hoping for the best. So I waited for a minute here while Claude was creating the game, but soon enough I had my prototype, and unfortunately I ran into an error immediately. So I asked Rosebud to fix it. The good thing is they'll actually, whenever there is an error, it will immediately tell you what it is and how to fix it, so you can just select what to do. And then while I was waiting on that, I actually browsed through what Claude thought should be in my game, and it said that some of the twists would be a power-up, like a dash ability to run through for quick escapes, and then also combo meter, and then a slow-mo enemy setting thing. So I was quite excited about this. It seemed like it understood the task much better, but I immediately saw a couple of errors while this was still loading for the enemies and the other placeholder assets being just blank squares. Once I had this game, it actually loaded, but I was horrified. I was like, what is this? I was genuinely in shock seeing everything pulsing around, and I was kind of able to move, but I couldn't see where I was or where I was heading, and I was just so overstimulating looking at all these pulsing balls here. So I immediately sent a screenshot back to Claude and I said something is clearly wrong here. I asked it to reduce the size of my avatar and reduce the size of the buttons, hoping that once that was figured out, then I could actually, create the game and play it and enjoy it. All this flashing is because I've sped up the recording in order to edit this faster, but when I reloaded the game once it was edited, it was still looking the same and I was so annoyed. I literally just said, why are these still huge? And I'm waiting for Rosebud. Hopefully Claude could fix this error. Funnily enough, it told me that I see the issue. The circles are still huge, so I was really hopeful that it could fix it this time. And once that was ready, I pressed play, and this was exactly my reaction. At this point, I just had one final prompt left, if at all, for this experiment with Claude. So I just decided to try and send one more screenshot for the model and hopefully fix my game. I could not believe why this was not working. Pac Man is meant to be a simple game that was probably mastered by everyone at some point in their lives, and yet the AI was just overall struggling in recreating this game. So I was trying to describe the issue in a more granular way and say that I can't see where I am on the map because my avatar is just so huge, and I was really hoping that maybe this time it would work. And this is the problem with vibe coding, that once you can't describe a problem, you can't really find a solution for it. And you guessed it, the dots were even bigger after this final round of edits. So if I were to evaluate Claude's performance on this, it would not be much further from Gemini 3 Flash than we'd like it to be. So there was basically no functionality, the enemies were not working, and the 2026 twist was just non-existent. I mean, it was existent a little bit more, given that it told me it was going to give me power-ups, but it was non-existent in the sense that I could not find it, I could not play this game, and that kind of just snowballed and ruined the rest of the criteria as well. However, I was not ready to give up just yet, and I decided to try Gemini 3 Pro and Gemini Agent on Rosebud and give it the same prompt again and hopefully finally get to a working game. Now, I did promise you that there is a working prototype somewhere, so hint hint, if you haven't found it yet, maybe continue watching for a second here. So I let Gemini 3 Pro run with the prompt, and the good thing is that this agentic workflow actually has some sort of added on like thinking and tailoring for video games. So I was really hoping to get something, and the first look was pretty impressive. So it looked great, and it seemed like there were quite good physics established in the game, but I could not move. I promise I was moving left and right here. I was pressing all the keys, but nothing was happening on screen. So I asked Rosebud AI to fix this, and after waiting a couple of seconds, it actually rewarded me with something that felt like progress. There was suddenly a golden avatar, and it explained in the chat that the reason why I couldn't move was because this avatar was placed outside of the game grid, so I couldn't actually see it at all, and it made sense. But now I could only move if I press space, which is meant to be a power-up, so the arrow controls weren't actually working. And I had to put that back into the AI to hopefully finally get something that worked better. Now, this whole back and forth debugging has been so stressful simply because I wasn't getting anything rewarding, and I think this is just a matter of the task, not the AI itself, because I've done much more complex games successfully, but to my luck, finally, I had something that worked. Look at me literally going through the game, collecting all the points and everything working smoothly for once. The only tiny issue that I ran into here was sometimes it would go off grid, but it even had those classic Pac Man power-ups where if you collect one of the dots, all the enemies go like in this negative color, and you can probably fight them off and kill them here. So there were clearly a couple of bugs that I could have improved, such as, you know, making the enemies actually leave their little box because it seems like they couldn't hear, and actually shooting them, or, you know, moving faster, adding more power-ups. But this was pretty impressive considering all things in this game. So I would say the game dynamic for Pac Man is probably harder to program than you would think. Anyway, if I were to evaluate Gemini 3 Pro against all the benchmarks that the others were evaluated on, I would say that this was the most surprising model. I didn't expect it to work, given that Gemini 3 Flash didn't. But the game had functionality, it had enemies, and you will see them kill me in just a second. And you can see the game restart as well, which was great. And then finally, did it have a 2026 twist? I'm not sure of that, but let's face it, maybe we need a little bit more work on it first. Your support means the world to us, so thank you so much for watching, and let us know what game you want to see built next, or how would you try to reconstruct Pac Man.